What he represents is patriarchy.
We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.
Welcome back to the 21 Convention in Orlando, Florida, 2019 Patriarch Edition. Our next speaker has been around since the inception of this organization. From the very beginning, he's been here. Every speech, a multiple keynote speaker. From the very beginning of Anthony Johnson's building what it is that we're seeing today, Socrates, a man who you can find him on YouTube at Manning Up Smart, a man who's an architect, a brilliant mind, again, a multiple keynote speaker, someone who's been here and seen the entire evolution of what it is that we're doing today. You don't accidentally become an architect. He didn't accidentally become a patriarch. He's written the book, The Map. He's had discussions on all things man, from the pickup to being a father, and he's one of the few men that I will ever say has made me a better father because of what it is that he's done and the conversations we've had. And I don't say that lightly. And I hope he passes that on to you as well. So welcome to the stage, Socrates.
Thank you. I'm Socrates, and prior to today, I used to announce myself that I used to help people navigate today's challenging sexual marketplace. But today, I actually do get to do something more. I actually get to give a full-throated roar in support of masculinity, fatherhood, and the parental governing system we call patriarchy. I do this because I believe men and women should be brought together. The genders are meant for each other. I believe we are compatible and complementary to each other. But society, culture, our sheer ignorance to our human condition has taken us seriously awry. I wanted to do something about that, and I have been. It has been a challenge to get to this point, and I'm terribly grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today. I believe that the challenges we face today are not environmental. They're not survival-based. They're elements of our own construction. They're man-made. They're social and cultural in origin. And because of this, we have the opportunity to amend that readily or simply discard it. If feminism isn't working for you, if it isn't keeping women and children safer, if it isn't building more robust and vibrant, healthy communities, discard it. Ultimately, I believe we have a prime objective based on Darwinian standards, scientific standards, to survive and to procreate to the extent that our children have children of their own. Texas Dom talks about the importance of grandchildren and how immediately unimportant your children become when they enter your life. I think that is a testament to this ongoing natural system. It is appropriate. When we look at these institutions, we need them to survive. Any philosophy that does not put relationships, marriage, and child rearing first among social orders is objectively wrong. Wrong to our human nature, wrong that it is continuously anti-thriving, and wrong if it was persistently applied, it is self-extinguishing. I objectively stand opposed to those ideals that don't support relationships, family, child rearing. That is the bulwark of civilization. And anything that demises that is a saboteur to our species. Ultimately, Knowledge should be utilized to your gain, to your thriving and success. Where it doesn't, it fails you. Ultimately, nature just doesn't care. It doesn't care about your fears, your concerns, your failed marriage, failed relationships. It doesn't care. It doesn't care about the challenges that you have to overcome to meet and exceed a woman's hypergamous demands. It doesn't care about hypergamy. It doesn't care about your thousands of YouTube subscriber rates. It doesn't care about your marches and your smartly knit cunt caps. It simply doesn't care. Furthermore, nature doesn't care about the fact that how much money you may have saved by switching to MGTOW and going your own way. It simply doesn't care. Nature is a ruthless system that demands results. Either you will meet our prime objective of surviving and having children of your own, or you won't. It's as simple as that. Nature doesn't care. Hypergamy doesn't care. Hypogamy doesn't care. Ultimately, it is going to have to be a choice you make. And that's going to be a tough decision. Whether you do or you don't, that burden rests on you. I also want to sit down and stipulate that you're an evolutionary success. You are a result of over 3 billion years of evolutionary history, the living, breathing end of that legacy. Oops. Here's a graph. This is 14 million years showcasing hominid evolution. All right? That's a considerable increase. It's a remarkable graphic study. As an evolutionary success, you are at the living end of over 150,000 years of human development. That's over 250,000 generations before you. I'm going to tell you, you have everything you need to succeed right now. Your challenges will not be biological. They're going to be social. So let's take a look at this really quick. And as we kind of look in perspective, when we look at this 14 million year track line, and we're looking here is millions of years on the bottom, 14 million, and brain volume is an indication of intelligence as kind of a baseline. When we start looking at the very far end, we see primate development coming up and through, and about halfway across, we actually separate out from the chimpanzees. Chimpanzees go their own way. We can say bye, Felicia. She goes off on their way. We have gorillas next, then orangutans, and then we come up to Africanus. Okay? Interestingly enough, we're progressing slowly. Not really remarkable, nothing really special, and for the most part, it encompasses physical side dimorphisms, meaning that as you physically get larger, your brain kind of gets larger. Okay, so we're not talking a remarkable increase in intelligence here. There is, but it's not significantly something we're going to notice. But something interesting happens about 4 million years ago. It starts uptick. And we went from scavenging and foraging to a little more meat consumption. Okay? And that changed things. Nutrition matters. And nutrition spurred growth and development in ways in which we can see reflected in the fossil record. We can see it in our own evolution. Interestingly enough, as you cut where about 2.5 million years where it starts to arc up, there's a major behavioral shift. This is an indication where, honest to God, meat eating started becoming a major staple of our focus. Okay, it wasn't just small little game, little rodents, ants, insects, small fish. They started becoming bigger creatures. They became more predatory rather than prey. Interestingly enough, where it really starts to tick up is when we start discovering that animals savaged by predators, we could go over and use tools, stones, to crush the bones to extract fresh bone marrow, which was incredibly fat and nutrition and protein dense resource. That spurned other evolutionary strategies. Once you start utilizing tools, start implementing those sort of structures, you start seeing a big uptick. And what that's truly indicative of is now we're going after bigger and more consistent prey, animals larger than us. We're making our mark on the predatory scene. To the extent, we're now also doing it collaboratively. We're hunting in packs. And if you've ever seen the videos of hyenas attacking a lion, how it's consistently done, I can guarantee you we were doing similar type things. We're still primarily on all fours. We had the ability to raise up. We moved out of the branch and tree area. We're now crossing grasslands and savannas, and we're primarily a meat eater. Ultimately, what ended up happening is we got good enough in our skill that we started using specialized tools. And those tools allowed us to actually get considerable amount of meat. And you are the man when you do that. You are bringing home, quite literally, bacon in surplus, which allows you to even grow your families larger even still. In many cases, you actually can lift your head up, throw your shoulders back, take pride in what you're doing, and do your strut, right? You are Homo erectus. Take a look at that. Look at that. You see that? Bipedal. 2 feet. We're now standing on 2 feet. That starts happening here. And it is a remarkable exchange. This continuation upward, diet plays a role, obviously. Technology plays a role. It helps us even more. We have more refined tool points. We now have spears. We have other hunting, implementing, clothing, things that make life easier, things that make survival easier. But that line, going almost vertical like that, that's not the only thing that happened here. The remarkable thing that happened here was the degree and investment in childcare and parenting skills. Previously, we're a primate. Previously, we'd usually maintain infant care until about 2, 3, 4 years old, which would explain our mammalian reflex for serial monogamy, okay? And the serial monogamy typically would rotate for during the birthing seasons, every 5 to 7 years, so that you have to maintain a child, and once a child's able to actually maintain itself, integrate into the pack or the family storage group, it's kind of fending for itself, and in a sense, an operational adult at 5 or 6. This is starting to change here dramatically. Gestation development is extended much further out, probably 8, 9, 10 years. All right, where we start to see Homo sapien Neanderthalis take place, the Neanderthal, who was a thinking, breathing relative to ours that had many of the attributes that we recognize today as human. All right, but ultimately, we're at the top because of the things that make us human. Much of that, a tremendous amount of that, is going to be culture, societies, how we organize and structure our lives in families. It's one of the defining characteristics. And there we sit. It's a great story. The only problem with that story, it's not complete. We're not Homo sapiens. We're Homo sapiens sapiens. That's us. And that's fucking embarrassing. It's actually, if you really look at it, not only have our brain sizes shrunk, and that's a 15 to 20% reduction in size, our brains, and this is a humiliating part, are smaller than the fucking Geico commercial caveman. Smaller than the Neanderthal. I don't feel particularly smart right now. What are you going to do? Interesting enough, we actually coincided with that species, subspecies. We roamed the earth while they were there. So let's take a look at what that comparison would be, eye to eye. That's Neanderthal on the left, and that's us. And that is a beast. If this was an MMA fight, game over, dude. He's got us, considerably. Larger, more robust, stronger, larger brain capacity, tool making. It's incredible. This is a language capable, tool making, fully developed hominid that lived in clusters of family packs. They didn't operate alone. You're not going to come across one like an lion out in the wild. You're going to come across a group of them. What makes this even worse is we didn't evolve parallel to each other. No, we evolved separately, and we migrated into their lands and territories. We're the interloper. We're going into their territories. How well do you think we were received? Let's just put this in relative context. If you think today we have racial issues, I would tell you right now, we had some really significant issues with Neanderthals. Naturally, conversely, I think they had some serious issues with us. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't an element of empathy and humanistic behavior associated with them. They're still from our genus. They're still part of our historical human lineage, all the emotions and everything else. And if anyone's ever seen a dog lay on a grave of its master, understands mammalian reflex to a death or a loss, I can guarantee you these were living, breathing, feeling, loving, affectionate individuals. We know it. It's in the fossil records. You don't do burials the way they do unless you cared. They did. You don't adorn yourself. You don't create pigments and makeup and tattoos the way they did, and we know they did. But the bottom line is, this is a direct competitor. We don't just have the challenges of living day-to-day survival to survive. We have to compete directly with that. And, by the way, here's a spoiler. We kind of know how this ends, right? But what we don't sit down and say, during this time period, hypergamy didn't give a shit either. You still had to answer hypergamy. Women still had to respond to a man's hypogamous interest here and compete with that. And the interesting thing, this is kind of the real fascinating part, we know there was crossover. We know hypergamous demands for women would look at that and say that could protect and provide and shelter me and my child. That's a viable option. And we know it happened. We've got their DNA. If you have my skin complexion, it's not a small percentage. It is a percentage or two that still exists. While they may be extinct, they exist in our genetics today. That's an awesome fucking idea. It is absolutely worthy of remark. Now, honestly, I don't think hypergamy was the real directional flow on this one. I think it was hypogamy, and historically that's always been true. Where we go in and invade and take over resources, we murder, plunder, rape, and we take them into account. I think it was far more likely early humans absorbed Neanderthal females into our family structures, into our clan base. If you've ever seen Real Housewives of pick a county, city, whatever it is, can you imagine what that shit show is like? Can you imagine proto-human females bringing and having been confronted with an interloper of a female Neanderthal into the collective? I don't think they were well received, to the extent that the genetic makeup transfer is remarkably low, less than 2%. If it was of value and they were absorbed naturally, you would see more of it. We don't. We see separation of the species, subspecies, and separation of our kind, even though we do have some of that genetic legacy. So ultimately, a Neanderthal or early human that could not resolve the issues and challenges, both environmental and threat-based, predatory threat-based, and could not resolve those issues and navigate that context, their children didn't survive. Neither did they. This is where the part nature doesn't care. It's why Neanderthals didn't survive. Okay? Likewise, where I said most of our challenges were not theirs, ours are different, ours are cultural and socially based. If you cannot successfully navigate and provide successful answers to the environment we exist in today, socially, culturally, politically, you're going to end up like him. Nature doesn't care. hypergamy doesn't stop, and hypogamy doesn't quit. Ultimately, though, you have everything you need at your disposal right now. Genetically, it's ingrained and encoded into you right now. When we talk about the Neanderthal brain structure and size, I want to talk about why some of the changes took place. Why would a smaller brain size be more advantageous in the same environment? And the reality is that there was an overall reduction in brain size, okay? And that results also because in some part, we are physically smaller, frame-wise than they are, even though we are technically taller. We don't carry as much muscle weight. We're not as robust. Our bones are not as stocky as they were. All right? And what that leads to is several different issues. And the fitness guys can talk to this one probably pretty well. Your brain is only 2% of your body's mass, on average, 2%. But requires 20% of your caloric demands. It is a thirsty organ. It wants and demands and needs calories if you're going to be a thinking creature. All right? That places hardships if you're trying to live hand to mouth out in the wild. Additionally, the muscles that make you strong, that you have to carry, that they had in copious quantities, are highly, highly caloric demanding. When you combine those two elements, their caloric need compared to ours for baseline survival is remarkably different. There are consequences to that. We're able to outcompete them because we required less. We were leaner and meaner. Secondary element, which is another really interesting one, is when you look at the eye orbits. Comparison is subtle, but it's there. Neanderthal actually had much larger eye orbits than we do. They had a larger eye structure. Additionally, the back of their brain was much larger than ours. And that's the area of the visual cortex. That's the brain processing center for everything visual. Okay? Now, imagine what it'd be like to be a Neanderthal with better vision. Range, depth perception, your ability to spot shapes, figures, silhouettes, movement, peripheral vision, night vision, subtle things. These guys were highly, highly attuned to threat provocation and also predatory skill elements. These were serious hunter and gatherers that needed those resources and brain structures to survive. We didn't. We'll kind of go on that in a little bit. When you have better ability to have tool making and other food resources, you don't need that. But it is something that is worthy of remark because it changes the equation. Secondary one, this is kind of one of my favorites, is the nasal capacities here, nose structure, everything else, and also the sensory and brain perceptions within it. The ability to smell is an enormous benefit if you're out in the wild trying to survive. We know game animals have terribly heightened sense of smell. You know, we're talking yesterday with Ken Curry about bow hunting and elk and their elk's ability to kind of circle around looking for a threat based on smell, not just sight. Okay? I don't have a particularly good sense of smell, but honestly, there's a Krispy Kreme a quarter mile from my house, and I swear to God, on winter nights and it's calm air, I can smell when they're baking the fucking donuts. I think he had that ability on a regular basis, stiff wind or not. Want to know a really fascinating one? We have concealed ovulation. We can't tell when women are in estrus, when they're ready to breed, when they're ovulating. Most primates actually showcase that. It's called estrus. There's an engorgement of blood. You think of a baboon's ass when she's in heat. Okay, we don't do that. So if you have concealed ovulation and procreation's a challenge and an issue, and you want to know, smells pretty decent. That's why dogs kind of greet each other the way they do. There's all sorts of things issue. You don't have to walk up to a woman, hold her in place, and do the Joe Biden. Yeah, Not this one, okay? All right. Now, that guy, Kronk, he can sit there and go, oh yeah, you in the corner. Let me fix my eyebrow. All right? I think there's some advantages to this, particularly when we talk about your prime directive of surviving, that trait, and procreating. We have that as well. The interesting one is our brains didn't shrink just overall or in specific areas. There's a significant change. There's an exception to this rule. And it is this area right here, the frontal lobe, that arc, right in here. You see how shallow this is. And that does it actually does 4 things for us. It's remarkable. And that's what truly makes us human. Really, really makes us human. The frontal cortex primarily deals with a lot of movement, dexterity, our ability to kind of do this. Okay, small fine motor skills. And if you ever want to drive a chimpanzee or an ape crazy at a zoo, and I did this as a child learning anthropology, was do this. Get a chimpanzee to mimic behavior, and they'll mimic, and then start doing this. They physically can't do it, and it'll drive them mad. They get upset. I got thrown out once as a kid, out of the ape section. So that was my introduction to anthropology and archaeology. So, of course, which just fueled my desire to learn more. But what it does do for us, it allows us to move on to other tools, refined tools. Neanderthals used spears, there's no doubt. They grabbed a sharp stick, burnt it, go stick a woolly mammoth. Pretty fucking dangerous, right? If you ever gone up to a cow or a buffalo and thinking, I'm gonna go over and get you, I wouldn't recommend it. You're going to get hurt. They learned that they could fashion spear points, and they did it out of stone. Resin, wrapped it, did all that. We, however, advanced that technology. They didn't. We started using flint and obsidian that has razor and surgical-like properties. That allows that spear point or arrow to penetrate deeper. It's almost like an armor-piercing round into the thick hide, wool hide, bone structure of a much larger animal. But we took it much further than that, something they didn't even come close to. We understood the idea of a mechanical lever, okay? And we implemented that in a monstrous display of technology called a spear thrower. It allowed you to take a spear, a specially designed spear, and be able to cast that further, more accurately, delivering tremendous kinetic load, stronger than you can ever thrust with, utilizing advanced technology and spear point penetration. And because of that, we ate better and we ate more consistently. Further fueled decision making. Remember, evolution is based on a change driven by selection. Needs to be chosen for in this particular case. That's fabulous. The secondary thing that happened was the frontal lobe is also responsible for our understanding of visual orientation, our idea of our physical being in space, and in particular in relation to other things or other individuals. Doesn't sound really interesting, but let's just kind of take a step and kind of what would we be looking at here? Now this is going to be perhaps theoretical. I don't think Neanderthals ever did yoga. I don't think Neanderthals ever did Tai Chi. I don't think they wrestled. They didn't develop combative arts. Whether it's wrestling, whether it's, caveman doing kung fu, jiu-jitsu, these are human traits and characteristics. There's no doubt they tried to wrestle. There's no doubt. That's a physical combative element. They're hominids, they're going to do it. I think we understood joint manipulation in a way in which they don't, which made us a lot more dangerous. Not only hunting, but in regards to other hominids. And remember, warfare is advanced skills of hunting against our own kind, the most dangerous predator to walk the earth. Combatives. That's a skill set that the brain can foster. Understanding your position in space. The last one, socialization and communication, all up here. These are your relationship skills. These are skills that allow you to have larger family structures, larger organizations, to coordinate that. All right? These are relationship skills. And relationship skills do what? They reduce tension. They reduce violence. They reduce conflict. It's kind of important if you want to take your long-term interests at stake. You piss Kronk off, he's going to go apeshit. Piss him off, he'll get even. There's a difference. Which leads me to the last one. Magna Valley was no Neanderthal. We are. The ability to strategize, plan, to conceive short-term solutions, push forward to attain our long-term objectives. We just didn't become a better hunter and gatherer. We became murderous, highly effective killing machines. And we weren't satisfied with just the other animals. Think of how much, even today, we value combative arts. It's still a legacy issue. Even though we have a smaller brain, our areas of brain growth hugely improved our ability to thrive and succeed. Now, this is all combative. A lot of those same skills, particularly dealing with the social and communication issues, grew our ability to parent, which really allowed our ability to survive and then make sure that the investments we had in our offspring succeeded us and had children of their own. Remember, the second component was to procreate and that your children had children of their own. If you don't have highly attuned social skills, that's not likely to happen. All right. Ultimately, your challenge is to understand you have all these terribly advantageous traits and capabilities already ingrained with you. You're a superior species from everything we've seen before and currently have. And the challenge you have is getting over the constructs we're stumbling over ourselves. I don't want to take it lightly because they're serious, but let's put it in perspective. His challenges aren't ours. He faced significant challenges. Environmental, a world that was dangerous and ruthless, and he had to live day to day to day. Every day, that individual had to get a paycheck. He also had a competitor that was fully capable, robust, and natural killer. And I can guarantee there was conflict. Guaranteed. They're actually finding evidence of armed conflict in the fossil species. We don't face that today. Our challenges are man-made, and we need to address those. Ultimately, patriarchy is a calling. Patriarchy is a solution to the things that early man faced. It was the answer to the challenges brought by his world and the predators that he had to defend against. And patriarchy is primarily interested in the family structure as a base unit because it is the smallest form of governance you can have, two individuals that have interests beyond themselves. You can self-govern, but your interests are singular, primarily. When you have a relationship, you have your needs, you have their needs, and you have the relationship's needs. And you need to be able to manage and maintain all that. The fabulous thing about all this is we know that it's also masculine in nature. These are not feminine traits. The ability to survive, protect, and to provide are inherently masculine. These are our roles. The fabulous thing is we have 10,000 years of human combined collective experience to show that this method works across time, across continents, across cultures. No other form of family structuring works better than this. This isn't an academic exercise. This isn't a sexual political theory. These are proven, tried and true over time and have been successful. If we want society and civilization to survive, we need to make sure we have a culture that functions. And to have a culture that functions, we need to have a society that nourishes. For a society to nourish, we need a family structure that endures, relationship structures that endures. And all that is predicated upon individuals who are thriving. If you don't have those, everything beyond it is going to collapse. Society, culture, civilization, all of it's at risk. Today, sexual politics is diametrically opposed to that. It is diametrically opposed to success and the historical proven record of success. And it is not measuring the results. It's not taking into account that feminism is more dangerous to women. Feminisms and the results of it do detrimental harm to children. It's diametrically opposed to this. And we should fight it vehemently. I'm kind of often challenged with the idea of how do you then kind of approach patriarchy? How do you kind of explain some of the other merits and benefits and try to persuade the other sex and say, what do you tell your mother who doesn't understand? What do you tell a spouse that doesn't understand? And I simply ask, what has feminism done for you today? Show me honest results that feminism owned, created, and developed on its own that's benefiting you in a significant, meaningful way. Then honestly compare that to alternative systems. I'm not saying that there isn't room for improvement. There really is. But let's be honest about it. Let's measure those results. Let's have an honest discussion, pro and con, and work at this. But this does work. And if it's working, don't torch it on the ground because you want to get rid of the weeds. It's foolish. It's insane. It's irrational. Oh, and by the way, those behaviors didn't get us here. The next step I would like to talk about is it's a multi-part, primarily two parts. And it's a call to fathership. It's essentially the first 5 years are the most critical. We know that the children that have the brightest and most potential prospects in life are those that are most thoroughly parented. I don't think that's a startling statement, but it would surprise some. Based on that, we should be looking at those first 5 years as being terribly critical elements to our child's success, to our family's success, and to our personal legacy. In the first 5 years, your child's brain will be 90% developed. Personality, brain development. we should be taking particular care to note, to handle that, be prepared for those results, and do so appropriately. When we talk about a child's needs, we talk about in the first 18 months, you're an infant, and the importance of stabilizing a personality during that time frame. You are completely dependent upon the care to feed, shelter, protect, and provide affection during these years. Right? 18 months. The most important thing you could do during this time period is no harm. You want to fuck up your child and your legacy? Hit him. Hit him now. Hit him hard. The hand you wield does not just hit flesh. It literally hits not only the child's psyche, that's going to resonate for the rest of their lives. You are imprinting your hand upon the face of their brain. The human brain will not wire itself properly if it is abused or traumatized here. You want to know what a psycho comes from externally? Here. Narcissists, sociopaths, all here. I'm not saying sometimes there's a genetic component, the external ones, this is where it comes from. And by the way, I'm talking to you guys. Are you guys really the offender? You know who really is the offender? If you want to protect your family, protect your child against an abusive mother. How's that one? The most empathetic sex abuses children between 0 and 18 months of age. A child that cannot talk, cannot walk, is completely dependent upon you and the mother for support it needs. And their solution, when tried, when stressed, is a resort to violence. And don't be misguided by the good-meaning grandmother who says, well, that's sometimes they just need discipline. Sometimes they just need to shut up and behave. Totally cool with that, Grandma. Because I'm going to treat you the same way. Because sometimes, woman, you just need to shut up and do as you're told. I can guarantee you, bring that shit up, and you will have adversely affected your relationship with her. Grandma does not want to be hit, understandably so. But it's cool to hit a toddler, an infant. She's okay with that. I wouldn't be. Do no harm. Do what you can to make sure you're prepared, whatever that is, that violence isn't the resort you drop down to. Prepare yourself, train yourself, use other tools, abilities. Make sure that your spouse isn't overloaded, the primary caregiver isn't overloaded, because you're going to do irreparable harm. Second phase is when you're a toddler, from about 18 months to about 5 years. And here is a remarkable growth period. They're starting to move, they're starting to talk, communicate, socialize, and provide self-care. And it's our job to make sure that happens appropriately. King Curry, yesterday during his workshop with Dr. Sean Smith, was literally talking about how do you develop confidence in an adult? How do you develop confidence with a child? A strong, stable personality and independent identity combined with capability develops confidence. This is what we're trying to foster here with child development, those preschool years. All right? Your job is to make sure that happens. Right? And there's a number of ways in which we do it. We know that during this time period, parental demands have dramatically shifted. For example, we explain FaceTime parenting, okay? The time in which parents need to be involved face-to-face with their child, communicating, engaging in structured and unstructured play. One of the most important things you can do to create creativity in your child's brain is actually engage in singing and song. That's why Disney does it all. Okay, it's already kind of baked in the cake, and they do a wonderful job doing that. Okay, it helps the neural pathways form and develop. right? We need to be doing this. Problem is, how? We have to navigate today's world. We can't navigate the world we want. We have to navigate the world in which we live in. And I understand the fact that there are challenges meeting our needs to provide shelter, to clothe, to feed, all in a terribly challenging, demanding environment. As a patriarch, your job is to map out a plan. If you can, restructure your life for these first 5 years. Do what you can to make sure that there is a single, sole source, parental-based caregiver that's providing nurturing, support, and encouragement, that is actively engaging them on a regular basis, that they can rely upon for the first 5 years of their development. You do that, you're 90% of the way to a healthy human being. The issue is, biologically, those demands are feminine-based. Historically, they've been feminine roles. Today, that's very much negotiable. Okay? It really doesn't matter whether it's male or female led, because we can learn these skills. You can learn those skills. You could be a phenomenal stay-at-home primary caregiver. In many instances, the men I see who do this are vastly superior than the women who are doing this these days. They're task-focused, more manageable, cutthroat as far as getting jobs done, what they have to do, when they need to do it, and they stay on mission. They don't get emotional about it. Doesn't mean you don't get overwhelmed. But the bottom line is, when you're structuring your family and your household, you need to understand the structure and the organization of it. I don't care how you do it, what the arrangements are, but make sure you arrange for that. A secondary component to that is understand the challenges involved with FaceTime parenting. We are putting a tremendous burden on the primary caregiver because they're also primarily the domestic support individual, right? My mother never had to do FaceTime parenting, very little. There was no expectation of that. She cooked, she cleaned, she maintained the household. We got up, we got dressed. She kicked us in the ass and told us to go play in the street. And we did. We had a great time. Okay? I learned to be self-amusing. I entertained myself. We talked about that yesterday in a workshop. But bottom line is the demands today, we know, have greatly increased. It is unfair to place all that burden on one partner. You wouldn't go into a business doing that shit. Don't do it here. This is where you live. Don't shit where you live. Look at it. Understand that you're going to have to overcompensate for this increase in demand in some manner and regard. And there's several things you can do. My personal home, my partner's is staying with the kids, doing the whole thing, but I also understand she gets absolutely overwhelmed. And for the life of me, I don't understand men who say the following things. They don't change a diaper. Let's put it in comparison. If this was an external threat, you'd man up to the point of giving your life to protect your child. On the other, you have a child that soiled themselves, and this is a biological health hazard imposed upon your family if untreated, if unmitigated. But you're too much of a man to handle it. I hear this from guys, and I just shake my head. My head may not actually move, but inside I'm like, damn, do they understand what they're saying? This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for bonding, for care, for display of values. So, for example, I know that when my partner gets overwhelmed, and you can see it because I'm reading her, I'm taking her temperature on a regular basis, seeing where she's at. I understand the difference between fine and fine. And I don't wait. I'm a force multiplier. Right? When I see my partner struggling, I'm like a quick reaction force. Usually it's centered around the diaper. Totally cool with it. Never knew how to change the diaper in my life prior to having a child. And actually, interestingly enough, trying to learn how to change a diaper was really interesting. The hospital had a 3-page listing, front and back, of all these freaking amazing courseworks that mommies could take to get prepared to having a child. There was Daddy Lamaze and Caring for Mommy and all sorts of other fun stuff. Really not a whole lot for the guys. And so I was in front of myself that I said, I know I'm gonna do this. So I took it as a challenge. So I learned how to do it. Then I got prepared and had the tools involved to actually be prepared when the time came to actually do the diaper changing, which is remarkable because actually you watch most moms, all the shit's everywhere. They don't have what they need. It becomes even more stressful, and of course they're overwhelmed already, right? How cool is it to have an actual toolkit? And I took it just like a medical trauma bag. It literally was modeled off of it. Shoulder harness, flipped out, everything was in place. I had everything I needed. Diapers, covers, wet ones, wipes. I even had one of those big ass wet baby cloths, where you can just wipe up a big trauma mess. I had changes of clothes. I had toys. I had just anything you could possibly imagine. And I could grab my go bag. If Daddy was on call and I had a quick reaction force, I don't know what I'm going to hit, so I got to carry it all. I had formula, I had bottles of water, I had, and this is going to be a stuff my partner doesn't like those. I actually had those glucose little things to give baby some energy just in case. Baby loves the shit, take sugar. So I had some of those in there too, snuck that in there. And it was just an impressive bag to the point that I actually had to fend my partner off. Like, that's my damn bag, get yours, leave it alone. If you want to operate mine, put yours and maintain yours that way. I also had a plan. I knew what the hell I was doing. I knew that any time I could actually do it with one hand. Anything I needed to get, I could operate. I knew how to handle things, okay? Yesterday there was the workshop on self-defense and probably guns. I know the range guys really love some of the stuff that they did, but there's ways in which to manipulate a gun, how to handle a gun to be most effective, how to bring it up. I took similar type training and skill sets on how to pull a diaper out, open the shit up. And by the way, I orientated the diapers so they came out the way I pulled them, so they're oriented. I didn't have to worry about what front, back, everything else. I knew when I pulled it out, it was already ready the way I wanted the setup to be. I'm telling you, the shit was fucking impressive. I actually was showing, my partner would actually have guests over, family members, everything. You got to watch him change the diaper. It's remarkable. He's fast. He gets it done. It's amazing. Okay? I'm not saying there wasn't a holy shit mess. There was. Didn't matter. Bigger the mess, better the job. Higher the value, right? You could smell that shit. But it wasn't about the diaper. My technique was not about the diaper. It was not about changing the diaper. What I was doing, I was caring for a patient. First thing you do, it is about the individual, not about the task. I had a baby that was in need, stress, crying, upset, and you have to maintain visual contact. Hey baby, we got this. Absolutely leverage some of the skills I learned in pickup. Change a woman's mind by changing her mood. Strongest frame wins. Kids crying, are you going to succumb to that frame? Or like, come on kid, we got this. And by the way, the kid's looking for the out, right? The kid is looking for a parental response. It's crying for a reaction. And when she gets the appropriate reaction, you are able to soothe her before you change the diaper. Kids wailing, screaming, crying, upset. Don't try to change the diaper. Stabilize the patient. You do all that. You work it through. You constantly engage. The other thing I learned too is maintain physical contact constantly. Never let the kid go. Okay, and this isn't about pinning the kid down in place. Absolutely essential, but it was not about pinning him down. It was about constant touch and reassurance. We've got this. Take her hand, wiggle her hand, stroke her hair, give her a high five. We got this. Talk her through the process. What are we going to do? As I'm walking her down the hall, I'm telling her, well, babe, we got this. You're holding a dirty diaper. We're going to change it. You're going to be wonderful. We're going to get you a new outfit. We're going to pick it out. You're going to look marvelous. Who's got you? Your diaper daddy does. Took personal fucking pride in it. Guess what happens when we come out? Baby's happy, mom's kind of relieved, and my job's not fucking over. I didn't have one casualty, I had two. I had a distressed parent, I had a distressed mother. I have to also deal with this. Now, the fact that I was fully engaging reduces her pressure to a degree, but she's now still overwhelmed. She now has a changed kid and is overwhelmed. Not enough separation to decompress, to get out of limbic thinking. And by the way, this is where mothers hit children. Okay? So I'm protecting my child. I'm protecting my partner by soothing and making sure to decompress the situation. And you do that by picking low-hanging fruit. I can guarantee you, there's going to be 1,001 things that you can do right then that are going to be observable right then, that are just shit not getting done. Pick the quick, easy, and fast stuff. When we're taking the close combat training with the range guys, they're talking about house clearing and that you're constantly looking for a job. Parenting is no different, particularly here. If you are reacting, look for a job. Get employed. Dishes. Pick shit up. Put toys away. Move shit around. Ask mom if she wants a glass of wine. Hey, take it easy. Let's turn off the kiddie music shit, okay? Learn to do that while the kid's up on your shoulders. Easiest place to wash the dishes is when the kid's riding your shoulders and you can sit there and play some music and dance with the kid. You're a fucking genius, right? What's your partner going to do? Like, yeah, my guy's doing all this shit. You'd be surprised. He goes in, knocks the shit out. The baby's no longer crying, doing the dishes, the baby on him. And I'm just sitting there going, thank fucking Jesus I chose you. Make sure you're preparing yourself for these sort of things. First 5 years is your responsibility. There's a litany of skills if you put your mind to it. Prepare. This isn't a life sentence. It's 5 years. It's a military tour of duty. Except you're not serving your nation. You're serving your family. You're serving your legacy. And that's a cornerstone to your nation and civilization. Treat it as such. Change your perspective a little. See what that does for you. The next is the next 15 years. And there is no greater social indicator for failure than a single mommy raising a child. How do you change that? Make sure she isn't one. We know men are responsible for cultivating. Make sure you cultivate. Make sure you're present. And the only thing worse than a father that isn't there is a father who physically is, who's emotionally detached and not available. The ugly thing is that an absentee father has more negative impact than any other external factors other than physical abuse and trauma. Not race, not class, not income. And if we understand the concept that being wealthy doesn't eliminate problems, but provides you opportunity and choice, make sure you have it here. Make sure you are so wealthy emotionally and connected with your child that you have opportunity and altitude and choice. But it is going to be your obligation to make sure this happens. In those 15 years, we know children are apprentices to their experiences and expectations. You've heard this in the last 3 or 4 days extensively. I don't want to cover a whole lot more because it is all there. But they are learning from the get-go. They're imprinting. It's what we do as mammals. It's our primary source for knowledge gain of how we learn, is by imprinting, by our experiences, what we see and experience and the feelings that we take away from it. We remember how you made us feel more than what you said. Leave a positive impression here. Structure your life to be an available and present, dedicated father. Cultivate. And if you want to be a patriarch, over-cultivate. All right. I'm going to kind of go really quick on the next one. One of the challenges we have as parents is that how do you teach, and it was a conversation that came up literally 6 months ago, how do you teach the underfathered, people that do not have a father in life, how to father? And it becomes a particularly interesting challenge. You can tell people to do things, but you can't necessarily always show them. Like, I could tell you the story of the diaper thing. It'd be a hell of a lot better if I physically did it with you. So how do we do that? How do we give the tools and resources to the underfathered to father appropriately while they're fathering? And it became kind of a challenge. And one of the things we talked about and we knew was storytelling and connection with your children, spending 20 minutes a day dedicated to your children, listening and engaging, developing the lines of communication, developing an emotional bank account with them is so vitally important. And one of the easiest ways you can do that are by rituals. You heard the guys talking about bedtime rituals, storytelling, okay? Have you gone into a bookstore recently and looked at any of the children's books? There's quite a few. You can go to a public library and there's a lot, but publicly what the market's providing is rather startling. Good luck finding one with a father. When we kind of independently kind of pulled it in that weekend, I actually went to a couple of stores. We actually found one, had a male. He was a grandfather and he was a buffoon. How do you find content that matches your value system? Now, in all fairness, you can find a lot of content that has a lot of value-based content that may not align with your values. For example, you can find your baby's first feminist book. And on mommy blogs galore, you can see how proud they are to share that with their sons. Okay? Like Tanner said yesterday, you cannot send your child to Rome and expect them to come back opposing Caesar. So the challenge was, let's provide a content. Let's do something contrary to that. So we're not using She Persevered, the story of Hillary Clinton, okay? Or the ethics version of it, She Persevered, Elizabeth Warren's story. So we came up with a kind of an idea of what would that kind of generally look like. And we had a project where we sat down and said, how do we express a positive masculine viewpoint, family-oriented and family-centric? How do we convey stories like Aesop's Table that have values that can engage not only children, but speak to the adult? How do you parent and teach someone how to protect their child from being bullied if they don't know how themselves? And they can do it by having this conveying system of a ritual with a storybook that does just that. We also sit down and utilize parental resources in the back that communicate directly to the parent on how to maintain and do these sort of communication efforts, how to engage, how to prompt more questions. And the benefit of using fictional characters is it's safe now for the child to discuss it. It also, you can enable an adult to ask a question. Have you seen bullying today? Have you witnessed it? What was that like? What did that mean to you? What could have been done? How did that happen? Okay? Then you can result it and bring it closer to home. Did you get bullied today? As opposed to talking to your kid and going, hey, how was school? It's much like your boss saying, I have an open door policy, who's constantly checking his phone, constantly checking email while you're talking to him, going through papers, checking notes, marking time, or whatever the hell he does. The fuck he does have an open door policy. You have to be engaged. You have to be there and present. You have to develop the lines of communication before you need to rely on them. There was a moment after changing my diaper story, all those things, that my daughter came up and pointed, this was she was young, and pointed that she wanted her diaper changed. And it struck me that she came to her father for help and assistance when her mother was right there. And I'm telling you, that was a shot to her mother's ovaries, but right to my heart. At that moment, because of a year of conditioning behavior of being there, she came to Dad for assistance and help when she had need. I want to make sure I carry that forward. I want to make sure you men have that ability and capability as well. And so we created this project and a book. We'll see how it goes out. And if you want to hear more about that, we'll be discussing it later on. But ultimately, the great catastrophe of life isn't that we get zeroed out of our finances, of our businesses, of our house, of our homes, of our wives, our families, and marriages. The great catastrophe of life is that we played it safe and we lost the opportunity to live a life of meaning that was fulfilling and that was filled with joy. So much so that our own cup not only overran, but it filled the cups of others by our own example. Patriarchy works. Patriarchy is embedded into your genetics, but it only works if you're aware and you actualize on it. And when you do, everybody wins, starting with you. Thank you.
What he represents is patriarchy.
We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.